And I think we have to note that we're still allowed to be virtual and the meeting is being recorded. So if we can start with a roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton,
Here.
trustee Dickon,
Here.
trustee Eastman, trustee Haber,
Here.
trustee Hollander,
Here.
trustee Jamerson,
Here.
President Ford.
Here. Next item of business is the approval of minutes. We've had a chance to review those. Could I hear a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
And
Is there any discussion? Trustee Clayton?
just a small typographic thing. At the end of the Treasurer and Finance Committee report on the second page, very last sentence, it's not the Arbor grant, it's the ARPA grant, capital ARPA.
Do you accept an amendment to the motion?
Yes.
As I do.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Dickon.
Sorry. Aye.
Thank you. Trustee Eastman, trustee Haber,
Aye.
trustee Hollander,
Aye.
trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Thank you.
So approved. Next item of business is the approval of bills.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton,
Aye.
trustee Dickon,
Aye.
trustee Eastman, trustee Haber,
Aye.
trustee Hollander,
Aye.
trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next, the Treasurer and Finance Committee report. Trustee Clayton, do you have a report?
I have nothing other than what's on the agenda in my later committee report.
Okay. Director of Community Services. Where are you?
I'm here.
Okey-doke.
I have one topic tonight. Hopefully everybody got everything. We've had a problem with the county up north along Duffy and Maple Rose Terrace. I had a citizen come in last week. We're talking about some improvements we were gonna do to his property. And I was gonna take a ride out there and take a look at what he had. So he gives me his address and it ends up to be a 5-digit address. And I go, how do you have a 5-digit address on Duffy? So I looked it up. His address, he's at the corner of Duffy and Maple, and his address was 3115. He said a few months back, the post office sent him and his neighbors a mailing and said their addresses were being changed to 5 digits. And we just went through an exercise, if we recall, about 6-8 weeks ago of a resident on Riverwoods Road who wanted to go from 5 digits to 4 because he was having a hard time getting mail. And I've done some research. I've talked with Pat. We go back to 1995 when we first annexed this area into the village. I started in 1997, and those numbers have always been 4 numbers, except for a few. There was about a half a dozen that for one reason or another we had on our map with 5 digits. And slowly but surely we had changed those over on request. And now we're back to what we think, well, we don't know how many. So Pat has put together a list of what he thinks the old 5-digit addresses were from the county. We have 18 on there right now. And Pat says about the only way to take care of this is we have Mr. Huvard make up an ordinance that says the village wants to change these addresses from 5 digits to 4 digits, which we can do. Then we will send that to the post office and then send that to 911 and the firehouse and whoever else has to have this. I was more concerned finding out about the 5 digits because I was not sure if, since we've had those as 4 digits up there, if 911 would have that cross-referenced it. Pat thinks that they probably cross-referenced it a long time ago with four numbers and 5 numbers. So it's very confusing up there. And even the resident said he didn't understand it. He didn't say much about it because he said, well, the letter was from the post office. He figured it was their job to do that. And so that's what I'm bringing for you tonight is somehow, some way, I think we should probably clear this up because now we're right back in the beginning of time where we were 25 or 30 years ago. And we don't find an ordinance. Pat's looked, I've looked, I mean, we have the ordinances where we annex the property and stuff, but I don't see anything where we actually change the addresses. Now, Pat, you have anything to add? Is he there?
No, I think that summarizes it quite nicely.
Trustee Jamerson, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just, I was just looking at Google Maps and they actually show both addresses listed on the properties, a 4-digit and a 5-digit on some of the properties. So and it's not like they dropped a digit. The numbers don't correspond at all. Crazy.
No, they don't correspond. And I asked the guy, I said, well, he says, well, it's caused him some problems because he said he's had a few people call him. They sent him some mail to his old 4-digit address. And then they had it returned, address not available or address unknown or something like that. So he said, the post office now is returning mail. So he's kind of frustrated.
I just have a quick comment. I actually own a property off of Maple. We have a 4-digit address. There used to be a 5-digit address, but most of the houses switched from the 5-digit to the 4-digit. So I was surprised to see that they're trying to go back now.
What's your address now?
1916, all the way in a cul-de-sac.
1960. Let me get out my little map here. Maple. Okay. Huh. Yeah. Well, I have no idea why this happened, where this came from.
Yeah, but I know that a number of people on that street have both addresses on their mailboxes,
Right,
both with
yeah.
5-digit, and there's no correspondence between the digits.
So I think it's confusing, and I don't know. Patrick says it's by law we get to make the addresses, and I think we should try to. Everywhere else in the village, some are 3 areas. We have some signals that are different in some areas, but most of our addresses are all 4 digits. We don't have any 5 that are part of our numbering system. And I think
For the record, the engineer wasn't advising on points of law. I suggested that they contact Bruce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Attorney Huvard as opposed to Bruce Dano.
Right.
Although we honor the decision of our chief as well.
Yeah.
To be out of the address business.
No.
Chief, have you heard of any problems with this type of
Yeah.
stuff?
Like the emergency.
Not yet. What we have in our computer-aided dispatch system is whatever map Pat provided to our dispatch center in Deerfield. So those are the addresses that we're using. So, but I'm not aware of any confusion. I mean, we know that there's, as you said, Russ, there's historically, since I've been here, been 5 or 6 5-digit houses, and we know about them, and that's in our CAD system. But I doubt that the house that you're dealing with is like that in our CAD system, because Pat, I'm sure, provided a 4-digit number.
Yes, we have that as a 4-digit number. That was never one of our original 5-digit numbers.
If I may,
Yes, please. You were the person you're on my list. Yes.
well, probably drafted those ordinances in '94. I think what happened in part was it wasn't required that we change addresses when we annexed them. A lot of people at the time probably had been accustomed to their addresses. I know over the years, we've had a couple come in and then we changed them at their request. And when this last one happened about 8 weeks ago, at staff meeting, we discussed whether we should just change the rest of them. And we said, well, let's see what they want, because this is the only person we've heard from. But that was before we knew that there was this wholesale realignment by the county. People have address labels, mailing labels. They have to change a bunch of stuff when you change the address. So it's easy for us to adopt an ordinance changing the addresses, but probably we should couple it with some communication with these residents so they can be prepared for it.
And one of the questions I recall during our discussion is, do we have the authority to set the addresses? And the answer to that is, I'm seeing you say yes.
Yes.
So I think maybe what we do is we tackle it maybe section by section, and that was the suggestion of the village engineer. And we've mapped out that northeastern part of the village where a lot occur, not all weird addresses happen in that area. The street I live on, at the very end of the street, has 4-digit Deerfield Road addresses. So if we can bring something back to the board that, a plan to address the issue, to find out if people want their addresses changed or not, and then kind of go from there. Does that make sense?
I was gonna say, if you want me to, I'll work with Vivian and Katie maybe the next week or two. We'll put together a letter. And since there's only 18 on this list to start with, maybe we'll send out a letter with the 18 and say, this is what we're proposing, and see what kind of a response we get.
Any comments or questions on that?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we move forward with that? We can bring it back to the board.
Okay, will do.
Do you have anything else?
For now, no, that's it.
Okey doke. Moving on to consultants report, the attorney's report, please.
Everything I have is on the agenda. The Plan Commission is meeting on Thursday, and Lori probably will address that in a few seconds.
Okay,
So nothing else.
the engineer's report.
Just as a number of you are probably painfully aware, we're in the midst of our roadway work for this year. I think most of the pavement removal has been accomplished, and we're going to be moving to paving pretty shortly. And then the meter upgrade project continues. I get calls, 4 or 5 calls a week of people with questions, but there's not been a great deal of resistance, and the project is moving along. That's all I have.
Good. The ecologist is not here. The Plan Commission report, please.
We will meet on November the 4th, Thursday night. We have a really busy agenda. We have 2 hearings slated. The first is a hearing on the Bee Cafe application for a limited restaurant or a cafe food shop. That's in the former Center for Holistic Medicine off of Sanders. And we also have the Thornton's application for an automobile service station and convenience store at the southeast corner of Milwaukee Avenue and Deerfield Road.
Are there any questions for Chairman Brightcoff? Okay, seeing none. The Zoning Board of Appeals did not meet. The police report, Chief, please.
The police activity is in the board packets. Since the last board meeting, we've had 2 residential burglaries. One was on October 21st on Oakhurst Lane, and the other one was on October 22nd on Sunset Lane. We've been going through video that we've been able to locate from neighbors or from the homes themselves that we found during neighborhood canvasses. And we are identifying vehicles, and we're comparing notes with other towns, some north of us and some well south of us, and we believe it's the same crew. What this particular crew is doing is they knock on the door. It's always an elderly resident who lives at the house, and they knock at the door, and if the resident opens the door, they attempt to do a roost burglary where, and I've sent out a lot of emails on this, but they try to distract the homeowner and get the homeowner outside of the house by saying that they're doing work in the area and they need to look at property lines, or they work for the village, or they work for ComEd, and they get people outside while their partners go inside and burglarize the home. But what this particular crew of ruse burglars are doing, if there's no answer at the door, then they're forcing entry, and they're just committing a straight residential burglary. Which is unusual. The ruse burglars usually don't do that. This particular crew does. So I've been encouraging people to sign up for our vacation watches when they're out of town, and we'll come by and check your homes regularly. And I'm also encouraging people to contact our crime prevention officer and arrange to have a survey done at their house where Officer Marchiello can go over their locks and make suggestions and make sure they're using the right types of screws in their deadbolts, and talk about lighting, talk about cameras. I think it'd be very beneficial. So I am encouraging people to contact Officer Marchiello. I did attend the Oakhurst Homeowners Association meeting last night with the mayor and Officer Marchiello. And we did talk about loose burglaries, and we did talk about getting people to sign up for the home survey. And that's all I have.
Are there any questions for the chief? Any comments? Okay, seeing none, we have a special guest star this evening. It's our former mayor, John Norris, who is also the village's representative at Swalco. And John has a report for us.
And I'm going to be very careful because the last time I followed the chief with a report on solid waste, I apparently covered the police with solid waste or something like that. So the good news tonight, to borrow words from Gabriel Heater, is there won't be any increase in the O&M fee that is paid per resident, because Swalco has actually increased its revenue. I passed along a memo to you, I saw in the packet. Spending is up 1%, but revenue is up 8%, which is good. You should be aware that as of right now, though, that revenue will be dropping in 2026 because the Countryside landfill is anticipated to be closed. And that would be a significant drop in revenue. It's being planned for, and they're looking for other ways to get revenue, probably transfer stations, but for at least the next 5 years, everything should be good. Good news also is that the village of Riverwoods is continuing to increase the diversion from the waste stream to recycling. Over the last 3 years, we've increased from 44% to virtually 50% diversion, which is one of the higher rates in the county. Unfortunately, the county's goal is 75%. So we still have a ways to go, as do our other residents. But other than that, as I say, the solid waste agency is solvent. We're working on various programs such as product stewardship to try and have manufacturers of products build in the disposal means and better packaging so that we can reduce waste in the least painful way, or else have the user pay for it when they're buying, because most people don't mind forking an extra $5 out for their 75-inch television when they buy it. But boy, they hate to have to pay anything when it comes time to dispose of it. So it seems better to have the user pay by going into it on the front end. And with that, that's basically where things are. Are there any questions? If not, I'll tell you it's 85 degrees down here. It's gotten a little cooler, so life is tough. So
Good to hear from you, John.
hey, it's good to see all of you, even the guy who's got the picture of his first real estate transaction up on the wall behind him, Mr. Huvard, because I'm sure he did the zoning for Adrian's wall.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Well, be safe and healthy down there. Okay, next, information and comments from the president. Strangely enough, I don't really have anything to say this evening, other than when I did attend the meeting with the Oakhurst people, the chief and Officer Marchiello really did a nice job. And the community is very much behind the police department and very complimentary of all the work that they've done. So you should know that. Visitors wishing to address the board. Okay, I see none. Have we heard any emails or anything?
Sorry, I forgot to check.
Okay, 1 minute. No,
Almost there.
almost there.
No emails.
No emails. Okay, there are no visitors wishing to address the board this evening that we can see. So we'll move on to new business. And the first item of new business is the approval of the BSNA contract for accounting and associated operational systems. Trustee, there you moved over there. Trustee Clayton and Wes Levy and Nicole Kozlowski are with us this evening to discuss this. So Trustee Clayton, if you'd like to begin with an introduction, please.
Just that Wes is the
You're breaking up, Mike.
yeah, I'm gonna have a little trouble with my sound, so just go to Wes.
Okay, Wes.
Well, thanks for
Wes is
the
our partner in
introduction, Mike.
charge.
Yeah, so before you tonight, we have a proposal from BSNA for a complete ERP system change upgrade from our current application, which is Assist. ERP system or enterprise resource planning is an all-encompassing application to house all of the village's financial records, payroll records, that integrates with cash receipting, building department records, community development. So an entire application to house all of those functions. The reason or purpose for how we got to this point for a recommendation for a new application is some of the inefficiencies with Assist, the support with Assist being subpar, and the system being hosted locally, requiring updates and frequently crashing, for lack of a better terminology, while we're using the application. BSNA, which we are recommending, is a vendor, a software company that we're very familiar with. We use quite frequently in the municipal space in the northern part of Illinois. We have a lot of experience in this realm with different applications. There's 3 or 4 other larger entities or software providers that specialize in the government space like BSNA. But a couple of the things that we really like about BSNA and why we're ultimately recommending them is their support. Currently with Assist, it's kind of hit and miss, and the timing in which we can get responses to our inquiries is rather slow. BSNA markets and touts a 15-minute response time on their support calls, which allows us to be exponentially more efficient with our tasks as we run into issues, problems, or we're trying to do something new within the application. BSNA has a very customized, tailored implementation process that will allow all village users hands-on training in person with the representatives from BSNA. In addition, one of the big selling points with this application is cloud-based. So the information would no longer be stored or housed locally on the village's servers. All updates, maintenance, things of that nature would be performed by BSNA within the cloud. I know when we say cloud, everybody knows that or thinks up in the cloud, but in this case, the cloud for BSNA is not some server in Michigan owned and operated by BSNA. It's actually stored and utilized through Microsoft. So Microsoft would be housing the data. A conversion and implementation like this is a pretty large investment. I believe you all have the proposal within your packets, but I want to run through some of the costs, the dollars, what they mean. Year 1, so implementation year, and then year 2, moving on. Actual implementation costs and software costs for the first year are $72,760, which covers the modules, the data conversion, and the setup. So pulling data from the existing application, putting it into the new. the training and implementation. In addition to those costs, in the first year, depending on how much on-site in-person training, they've provided an estimate of travel expenses of $10,915. And then the first year hosting fee, so the cloud-based costs of $4,000. The implementation and training at $23,000 is an estimate of their costs. We only pay for the days in which we use. So if their estimated days, which are in the proposal, are less, or the actual days are less than estimated, those costs would be reduced. I know this is a pretty substantial initial investment, like I said, but I think it's a necessary one for the village to move forward and utilize systems and applications that are maybe more current with an entity that is constantly improving and advancing their applications rather than just being a legacy system that's been around without updates for some time. As far as background on BSNA, they have been a software company completely focused in the municipal government space since 1987. They have around 2,100 government entities that use this particular software that we're recommending. The cloud-based version, which is part of the recommendation, is a newer version of the software. So of that 2,100, I think about 100 or 150 entities have adopted cloud-based. There is some additional functionality that we don't have now with online options for payments for various village services, which we think can be beneficial to residents. But as we have discussion tonight, we could certainly pare down or scale up the modules or applications that are being provided. This is just a proposal, not the final contract. I know the village in the past has had maybe some issues with service providers, vendors, or application providers that maybe have came in, talked a big game, and then weren't there to support the system or whatever they provided or sold the village in the past. But I have a high degree of confidence in BSNA and that they will be here 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. Obviously, I can't guarantee that they would not sell the application to a different entity. But we've had a good working partnership with BSNA through the years, and I'm confident in the service and the application that they provide. All that being said, which I know is a lot, I certainly want to go around the room and entertain questions on the software, the specifics. So,
Trustee Jamerson.
So first of all, I don't disagree that Assist has not proved to be anything that we even may have imagined it to be. However, I'm also concerned several things about this proposal, because I've gone through this with our company on a much larger scale. And there's a couple questions I have. First of all, well, where can I start? I'm a little concerned that the yearly fee is the same as buying the modules in the beginning. That seems a little exorbitant every year. I know I expect a maintenance fee because that's the way our provider works, but that seems a little exorbitant. Second, I'm concerned about the amount of data that their hosting fee of $4,000. Doesn't say anything about the amount of data. If we decide to start, one of the things that someday I hope. We will be scanning all of the blueprints that we have. Pat's been kind enough to keep them in his office, which is probably causing friction in his end. But blueprints, I can tell you from experience, are huge files. They take up a lot of storage, and $4,000. It doesn't say anything about how much storage space that is, if it's anticipating us scanning drawings and connecting them to the building department files, which is what needs to happen. So that needs to be looked at. The travel expenses, I'm not happy that it's in tiny print at the bottom, because that adds another $11,000 onto the proposal. I'm also not happy that we have one bid for this. It's almost, I mean, it's going to be an ongoing expense for the village for hopefully many years, whatever we decide to do. And this is $82,000 plus, because we don't know if the services of setting up, of implementing the training. I mean, they have $14,000 for analyzing stuff, planning, scheduling, and then they have another $23,000 for actual, I'm guessing, setting up stuff, and some of that might be training, it looks like. I mean, I'm disappointed that this was thrown at us, and that it has, in my opinion, a lot of holes in it. I'm sorry, I agree 100%. We need something else, but I can't agree to this. I'm sorry.
Wes,
That's
would you
all.
like to answer? Mike, can I ask Wes to answer those questions, and then we'll come back to you, Trustee Haber.
Yeah, so there was a few questions in there, and then just general feedback on their proposal altogether. As far as the amount of data included in the hosting fees, I have a more robust contract that would kind of be the next stage after we've agreed upon terms within the proposal. I don't see anything explicitly stating the amount of data, but it's something we can certainly pose back to BSNA. In terms of the fees, I've gone through several of these implementations, and I know that the shock of the initial setup is big. Like I've said, it is a large investment. The way they've broken the fees down, the 23,000, which you had questioned, is the actual on-site days for training. The rest of the setup fees are for implementation. So taking all of the data, setting up the application for our specific uses. As far as additional proposals, so other options to review, BSNA does not have resellers of their applications, so they're the only entity selling the software, setting it up. They provide their own service. There are other applications out there, and if we'd like to entertain proposals from them, we certainly can. State statute does not require us to go through a competitive bidding process for the use, purchase, delivery, or installation of software. So it's not a requirement, but we can certainly get other prices for you guys to look at. Unfortunately, it's not comparing apples to apples because each software is different. I'm not sure 8-9 years ago what the implementation cost was for Assist. We can go back in the files to see what that looks like. But if you'd like to see other proposals, we can certainly reach out to other entities, so you have something else to compare to.
Trustee Haber?
So I concur with what Trustee Jamerson indicated. I also think that, having just one bid at this point in time and this kind of being foisted upon us without any background is somewhat problematic, only because it's kind of like deja vu, I think, for me and for probably Trustee Jamerson, because I think when we were bought into the concept of Assist some time ago, there were similar representations made about how this was going to be all end all, software that the village was absolutely in need of, implementing, and it was going to solve all of these problems. And here we are finding that those same representations did not apparently, prove to be accurate. So, I'm really concerned about it. I think there are actually municipal software consultants out there who can actually kind of assess exactly what your needs are, and provide you with solutions among a number of different potential software companies. Maybe trying to do it internally is just not the smartest way for us to do it. Maybe it is, I don't know. I'm just saying that's a possibility. And then also, have we actually, done a trial of this software? I think most of these software companies would allow us to actually do a free, 30-day trial. Now, obviously, we're not going to implement all of our product or all of our data into that software during that trial period, but we can do some hands-on with the various personnel in the office to see whether it's user-friendly, if it's intuitive, just generally how it makes us feel, and how we can compare it to Assist, as opposed to just kind of giving this to the new personnel or to the existing personnel and saying, okay, here's our new software and here's the training and this is what you're going to have to use. I'd like to see some feedback from the people who are actually going to be hands-on and using the software on a day-to-day basis. So those are my comments. I think this is premature to act on this tonight, and unless there's some, immediate need because Assist is just completely non-functional, I think I'd rather spend a little bit more time doing some investigation.
If I could add a couple of thoughts here. The software actually, Lauterberg and Amon acts as our consultant in this software choice. They have worked with a number of different programs at different clients. So they have a broader view, and in effect, in my opinion, we're acting as a consultant, what fits our needs and what fits us. When you look at the price, please consider that this system that he's describing will also do our payroll. We have a separate payroll system at this point. So it's a combination of the payroll system and our accounting system. So the number gets a little closer. And I think that I would like you to keep those things in mind as we continue our discussion.
I also have
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
a couple
I
of
was gonna-
comments.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Nicole, why don't you?
I was just going to make a comment. I have been working in BSNA for 4 years, and I've been in used a few different applications, probably 5 or 6 applications, and this is the best application that I've come across so far. And I know Bruce Dano and Katie and I walked through some of the modules together this morning even, to make sure that it would fit the village's needs. And it is pretty user friendly, but I just wanted to add a comment. So,
Wes, did you have something to add?
Yeah, and to maybe piggyback off of that, we can certainly set up a demo with BSNA for anyone and everyone who wants to participate to see some of the functionality, how it works, how intuitive it is, some of the features that it has that we don't currently have with Assist. That's certainly not a problem. As Nicole stated, we've worked with BSNA for a number of years, so we do have a pretty good comfort level with it. And in terms of a consultant to assist the village's needs, I concur that we're kind of acting in that role. And I know it's not a separate agreement or contract, but you guys are in a unique situation where you have outside consultants in the finance department that have run into and Nicole said she's utilized 6 or 7. In my coming up on 15 years, I've probably used 15 different applications. The application really makes or breaks the finance department and what they're able to accomplish in a given period of time. So we certainly wouldn't be recommending something that's going to be troublesome or problematic for the village, because that's just going to create more work on our end of things. That being said, there's certainly consultants out there, and if you decided to go that route, we could get an additional third-party opinion on what the right direction for the village would be.
Trustee Hollander.
I have some difficulty with this. The only thing I'm sensitive to is the idea we went through this process 7, 8 years ago. And here we are again. But be that as it may, that's in the past. My problem is that if you get another consultant, another recommendation, I don't have the technical expertise to make an informed opinion. And if you start comparing modules, I don't have the ability to know which ones are appropriate or not. So I have to rely to some extent on the people that we've chosen as our consultants to make their best recommendation. It seems to me that if they have an idea that there's a second company that will serve us equally in their mind, and we can get a comparison bid, okay. But I would have a hard time overruling our consultants on this because I don't have the ability to make that with intelligence. It makes me uncomfortable to say that, but we're to some extent beholden to the people that give us that advice.
Are there any other comments? Trustee Clayton? Not so good.
Sorry. Can you hear me now? I forget.
Kind of.
Can you call in?
Yeah, I'll try. The only point that I'm trying to make is that I recognize that many of the comments that were made have to do with the implementation cost of this. But on an ongoing basis, this system will only cost us $5,000 more than what we're paying for Assist and what we're paying for our payroll services now. So it's not a significant cost increase, but we do have to go through the implementation cost.
Trustee Jamerson.
So I'm going to bring the same question I had up before. Now that my trustee Clayton has said, so are you saying that our current annual cost is $10,000 or our current annual cost is $15,000? Because there's a $4,000 cloud fee in there that I'm still nervous about, because $4,000 worth of cloud space is not a lot of cloud space. I mean, I just know, because our company just went through moving everything to the cloud earlier this year, and cloud space is not cheap. Relatively it's cheap than buying a new server, but $4,000 doesn't buy you a whole lot of cloud space. And as I said, if we're going to be scanning drawings, which is where I think the building department is supposed to be going. So are we $10,000 a year, Mike, or are we 15 right now?
15.
That to the poll because you did the cost with that.
Yeah, it's about $14,000, and I know fees went up. It's more than it has been in previous years for Assist because they increased some of their support fees. And so Howard Simon plus Assist came out to be $14,000 annually.
That's just the charge for Assist. Is that correct?
For both of them combined.
Both the payroll and Assist.
Mm-hmm.
So the other question I have is, and maybe it's not a question that can be answered right now, but is the village going to continue using an outside service to do our accounting? Or are we at some point in the future going to have inside people learning how to do the software? Because if it sounds like Nicole's been using this at other customers. Yes. And the financial management module, I mean, and I realize that the training numbers are estimates. They have 12 days I mean, it's just, I'm sorry. I've been through this with my company because I was the one that was a point person. And so I was, and I'm just, okay, that's.
Trustee Clayton?
I don't know if I can fully address what you're saying, but I would just say this, and that is that you're dealing now with a piece of software that's in use by the people who are going to use it. This is not a new system for the staff or for the consultants at this point. It's been used for quite some time by LNA. So at this particular juncture, I can't answer your concern about the amount of cloud storage. But I can tell you that in terms of the operational efficiency and implementation efficiency, you're dealing with a firm that has already used this system in a number of applications, a number of villages and other government entities, and they're using it on an ongoing basis. And so this is what we're doing is going through a conversion process to go to a system that we're all, in essence, very familiar with. So I don't know if that answers any of your concerns, but we do have to look into. I hear you on the cloud storage, and I don't have an answer for that.
I do have, well, thank you, Mike. I do have one more question, and it's not addressed anywhere in the proposal. Are these named licenses, or are there a specific number of concurrent users? Do you know how the software is set up? Because it doesn't say anywhere if it's concurrent users or if it's named licenses.
Yeah, it is. You can't have concurrent users. I think their fee structure on the cloud side is, it's not unlimited. We can't have 5,000 people set up in there, but I can get a number on the maximum number of concurrent users. If we wanted to ask for a quote on the storing this data locally and using a local application, that would be a price structure that's currently like Assist, so a per user annual fee. But on the cloud side, it's you're purchasing the package and the support, not individual licenses.
Okay.
Attorney Huvart. You're muted.
Trying not to have background noise. Just so we have this sort of in the record, how many other villages would you say your firm is using BSNA in?
Not a straightforward answer. Our financial services arm, which provides services like Nicole, Roger, and I are for the village, probably has 10 government entities that use BSNA. If we factor in the audit arm and pension arm of Lauterbach and Amon, that number is closer to 40.
Now, your firm does work for more than just a handful of villages. So are there villages that are using something other than BSNA that you're working with?
Yes, there is. The other two larger players in this ERP space that we deal with are Tyler Technologies, which has a suite of different ERP systems geared towards the government space, and Civic Systems. There are a number of other applications, MSI, Fund Balance, Locus, which are all similar to Assist, where we have one or two entities that are using the application, but that's because they don't have the means for the investment in other utilities.
Of the other two that seem to be predominant that you have experience with besides BSNA, do you know what their cost structure is in comparison to what we're seeing here tonight for BSNA?
Not off the top of my head. I could go back through prior proposals with other entities to see how the cost structure compares. But at the same time, we can go through the same process with the other ones that we would put on the list to see what a quote looks like for implementation.
Trustee Jamerson.
Just one more thing. I think that, you know, it's not, you know, this is a whole package, which is great. It's all integrated, which is also great. But LNA is only going to be dealing with the accounts payable, accounts receivable, the financial side. The building department is going to be dealing with a ton of stuff. And I'm not sure who's doing water billing. I don't know if that's LNA now or not, but for sure, I think that we as the village should reach out to other clients that have this software, especially on the building department side, and see what their comments are about it. I mean, why would you ever buy a car without looking at, you know, the Consumer Reports or refrigerator or something? I mean, I'm not knocking the consultants. You guys do a great job for us. I don't want to have us make the same mistake that we made 8 years ago, and because of one person was in charge of getting the software, and I don't know that anybody that actually used the software was involved in that decision. So I think it's important to be able to reach out to some of these other villages and have their building department people that are using the system talk to, especially Vivian, who's going to be the one that's going to be using 90% of the building department functions, because that's huge. So that'll be my last comment. I promise.
Is that a promise, really? Trustee Dickon.
Yeah, I have a question for Wes and Nicole. So having been tasked with relaunching a new village website, one of the big hot topics is being able to pay bills and permit fees online. So would this software be integratable with the new website? And if so, is there an ability to generate digital invoices?
Absolutely. Yeah, part of that is included in Exhibit A with the online bill pay components. Additionally, with utility bills. And I think, you know, once we sit, if we decide to proceed, move forward, we'll sit down and put together an implementation plan and talk through all the specifics on these things. It's kind of hard to, from your guys' chair, not knowing what it looks like, how it works, who's involved, what functions it does, what we do on a daily basis. I understand that it's a little harder to comprehend the costs and the time and energy that goes into it. But I do want to say I appreciate all of the questions, comments, concerns, and I think these are all good discussion topics. Nicole and I are not taking it personally or a knock against us or LNA that you're concerned or have these questions. And I also want to state that we're not trying to force this or push this by any means. Part of why we're here is to put the village's interests first. And I think this is the right step, whether you retain LNA into the future or you hire, you know, employees, staff of the village. The issues and problems that we're experiencing with it aren't going to go away. So whoever's here in the future is going to have to muddle through those things like we are doing and have done. So this, I don't know who, I apologize that I'm not well versed with everyone on the board and how long you've been here. But you guys probably started this path down moving away from Assist 2 years ago. I came out and did a proposal with the mayor at that time and a few other individuals to talk through an application that Lauterbach and Amon uses for some of the smaller government clients that we have. That's kind of a free of charge with our services utility or software application. However, it's not an ERP system. It handles strictly the accounting functions. So all of the data from the different departments has to be manually fed in. We talked about going that route, but it's not efficient. It's not better. It'll spit out better reporting, but it's going to be a lot more time and energy to get the data there. So we didn't think that was truly the right direction, even though from a cost perspective, it'd be pretty substantial savings. So we're trying to present the direction that we think the village should go, but by no means is this is what you have to do. And if we take this meeting as the first step in this discussion towards something new and better, I think that's the right step forward. And we can certainly take everybody's feedback, get additional proposals, get some more answers to these questions, and revisit in the future.
I get a feeling from the board, we'd like to have a second discussion on this.
I would.
Okay, I mean, I'm seeing head nods, so, Okay, we'll bring it back. I think the things that I heard were data storage, a comparison local versus cloud. I'm hearing references, particularly with respect to the building department. I was hearing, as the implementation and training fees being, want more explanation for what those could be or what those aren't. So if there are any other topics, I'm sure if you have other things in your notes, you can send them along and we can make sure that our second discussion covers those things. As with any implementation, it will take time. And because it is so all encompassing, doing it mid-quarter or mid-year presents other issues with implementation, certainly. But we do need to keep moving forward on this. The support from Assist, when people call in, they might get a call in an hour, they might get a call the next day, they might not. So there are some very serious issues with that. It does not do what we need it to do. There are lots of workarounds that people have learned because the system itself is not user-friendly. And so it is an important thing that we continue to move quickly forward with if we're going to move forward and continue to try to handle our finances in a more consolidated fashion. So we'll put that on the agenda as soon as we possibly can so we can continue to move forward. Is there any discussion?
I have one other question, and this is kind of ancillary to this. And that is that part of this software is to do payroll. Have we had an underlying discussion about whether we want our payroll to be in-house versus outsourced and the relative risks attendant to having it in-house versus outsourced? I'm just wondering, whether there's been any thought behind that at all.
Wes, would you like to address that? The having one system, Howard Simon do it versus the system that's here. I think the inputs are still from us. Either way you cut it. And there is authorizations that go through that. Go ahead, Wes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so HSNA is a third-party payroll processor. You've probably all heard of an ADP or more locally a Paylocity.
I happen to use HSNA, so I'm familiar with them. I don't care that it's HSNA. It just happens.
Yeah, just in versus out. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so typically in ADP, a Paylocity, and HSNA are a software provider. They provide a utility for us to be able to go in, enter hours, enter employees, enter dollars, and they facilitate the movement of funds for both direct deposit, tax payments. Some of them can provide some other functionality to remit payments to third-party vendors that are associated with payroll deductions. But then most importantly, from a compliance perspective, they prepare and file your quarterly payroll tax returns. So you got state and federal 941. You have unemployment returns on a monthly and quarterly basis. And then at the end of the year, they prepare, file the W-2 and W-3, which is a reconciliation of those W-2s. So from the thought of whether we do it in-house or externally, I think the big concern there is more on the compliance side. They're not doing anything to review or understand the payroll of the village. They know the taxability of certain deductions based on what you tell them, but they're not typically the ones setting it up and doing the day-to-day pieces. So it's more of a compliance issue. With Lauterbach and Amon, you essentially have built-in compliance officers in the payroll space. At LNA, we actually process payroll for about 60 entities. We probably move north of $30 million a month on the financial services side, and then in the pension world, north of 50 million. So from compliance, we have a whole payroll team that focuses on payroll tax returns and things of that nature. So I think you guys are covered with us from that perspective. Obviously, if it comes back in house, in terms of, if you're employees to handle that, I think the additional workload is just quarterly returns at the end of each quarter. It's easy for me to say and talk about because I spend a lot of time in the payroll world as I do on the finance side. Payroll is not complicated if you spend time in it every day and it's part of your profession. But if it's not something that you do for a living, it can be a little bit more of a daunting task. So I can't give you an answer to the question. I can just tell you what we are capable of handling and doing for the village. I will say one of the benefits of an all-encompassing application where you're processing payroll from the same place that you're processing your AP or your utility billing is the ease and the accuracy of which that data is posted to the accounting system. You'll no longer be spending time creating journal entries, posting activity for those payroll transactions every couple of weeks. That time can then be reallocated to more on the compliance side. And I know that was a long-winded answer, but I want to be thorough.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions? Any other discussion? Well, thank you, Wes. Thank you, Nicole. And
Absolutely.
we'll, again, any other questions, please forward them along so we can get them to Wes and Nicole, and we can come back to you as soon as possible. Okay, moving on. The next item of business, Attorney Huvard, we've got an ordinance authorizing video gaming terminals in the village of Riverwoods.
I'm sure I'm not muted. We actually have a suite of ordinances, and
Okay,
I know I have them listed out in a certain order, but I think I should just explain how they all relate to each other.
yes, please.
Some years ago, because when the video gaming legislation was first passed in Illinois, the village had the option of, in that instance, of saying they would not permit video gaming in the village. And then basically it was the reason that it was done this way in the legislation is to say that it's okay to zone it out. In other words, to prohibit it as a zoning category in any of your districts. So it wasn't a very complicated procedure. We just simply said in our ordinance that was adopted, I think in 2009, that video gaming would not be an allowed use in the village. So in the first in the list of ordinances I provided, the first one is simply to repeal that ordinance from 2009. We did make it an offense to operate a video gaming terminal without a license. So we just sort of substituted one concept for another. One was that, video gaming wasn't allowed. We turned it around and said, okay, we repeal that ordinance, but operating a video gaming terminal without a license is an offense. Then the next couple of ordinances, and I'm just going to sort of run through them to give you the whole flavor, just to remind you, because the location of the proposed video gaming establishment is in the shops, the use for video gaming was expressly prohibited by the existing shops regulations, not just for shops, but in the mixed use plan development as a whole. So there's a text amendment that would allow video gaming stores, establishments to be allowed in a mixed use plan development, not this particular one, but just anyone to be allowed in a mixed use plan development, which could be anywhere that we allow mixed use plan development in a B1 district, which is could be shops or could be Colonial Court. The next ordinance is, now that we've amended the text to allow this as a possibility, the third ordinance in this group is the ordinance actually amending the special use for shops, because that ordinance only allowed specific uses for shops, not all of them that were allowed in the mixed use plan development. So in order to take advantage of the text amendment, the third ordinance says, okay, for you shops in particular, you can have a video gaming establishment as one of your uses. That probably gets us up to the fourth ordinance, which was adding a liquor license. So you can't operate a video gaming establishment. It has to be an allowed zoning use, but you also, one of the state law requirements is that it have a liquor license. I think we've discussed this. The village does not have currently a liquor license classification for this type of use. So we put together suggested language for this particular kind of use. The liquor license is where the village board has the most discretion to adjust the hours. Obviously, the video gaming establishment can't operate unless it can be pouring alcohol. So if we set the liquor license at midnight, then the store will have to close at midnight. If we set it at 1 in the morning, we'll have to close at 1 in the morning because it has to be operating, with a license during its hours of operation. So the license tracks what was somewhat requested by the applicant in terms of its hours of operation. Other conditions in liquor licenses sometimes are also imposed, but this is the suggested language that we've put before you to consider. And then the last ordinance is actually how we get to the fees. The state sharing of revenue that comes from the state, we don't have to address. That comes by the state legislation. But the license fees per video gaming terminal are how we address it by requiring a license for each video gaming terminal and a separate license for a terminal operator. In showing the breakdown between the video gaming terminals and the operators, we followed the example that was used in the village of Hoffman Estates. This is exactly how they do it, which we know is one of the locations where the applicant already operates. The terminal fee, per terminal fee in the Hoffman Estates is $1,000, and the annual license fee for the terminal operator is $400. We followed suit, at least to suggest to put something before the board. So in order to get to the point of actually having a video gaming store operating lawfully in the village, the board needs to act on all 5 ordinances.
Well, where would you suggest we start the discussion?
Well, that's of course, that's up to the board. Any questions about the ordinances, of course, let me know.
Trustee Hollander.
Andrew, Trustee Eastman sent out an interesting article. I did a little arithmetic just for our general information. Based on the 2 examples that were in the article, Oak Lawn and Tinley Park, their annual revenue was between $2,500 and $3,000 per machine. So whatever we decide, I'd like at least the board, based on that, even if you take the larger number, 6 machines, the revenue to the village is less than 20,000 a year, which I had estimated, I think, a couple board meetings ago, but this seemed to confirm it. I don't know whether or not there's any further information or that arithmetic was based on faulty figures, but that's something I think we ought to consider if we're going to be making this decision.
Trustee Clayton.
I think that article referred to the push tax rather than the sharing of
That's right.
the numbers that we've seen before. And so you're actually using the wrong, we're not implementing a push tax. We can't. I think it expired on November 1st.
Trustee Hollander.
Yeah, this was the amount of, to be specific, the tax revenue to the village, for example, on Oak Lawn was $730,000. And they had 250 machines. All you need to do is divide the $730,000 the village received by the 250 machines, and it comes out to $3,000 per machine for revenue to the village. It wasn't anything complicated.
We have a representative you're from Excel, is that right?
Yep. Yes, thank you.
Bonnie
Thank you,
Meston,
Mayor.
yeah, would you like to respond to that? Would you like to answer?
Yeah. The first question was in regards to a push tax, which has not gone through. But what I presented prior was exactly what the location, Baby Vegas and Hoffman Estates, paid the municipality per the Illinois Gaming Board website, per the splits. As Bruce said, that's designated by the Illinois Gaming Board, was over $40,000 just at that one location. Just wanted to make sure that what I've said before was based on Illinois Gaming Board numbers and the Freedom of Information Act. Thank you.
I have a question for Bruce.
Trustee Haber, yes, please.
So Bruce, I think in the past we've talked about, and I could have this number wrong, but I think that the applicant talked about maybe about a $40,000 annual revenue to the village from this location. That's my recollection. Is there a way to have a special fee for a liquor license attributable to a gaming facility?
License fees are typically, if you look at our ordinance, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. They're not, licenses are not designed to be revenue measures per se. They're the cost of keeping track of the establishment, of administering, of keeping records. So villages do not set license fees the way they set taxes.
Okay,
so
but can we have a special fee for a liquor license that is adjacent to, or with a gaming parlor?
Well, I don't think we established what the fee would be by establishing the Class K liquor license. That would be set forth in the fee schedule. So if you're saying, can the board set a license fee, for example, of $3,000 for this type of license, or $5,000? I think it can be higher, for example, than a license fee for a restaurant that serves wine and beer. I mean, I think there are some rational distinctions.
Okay, and then the second question I have is, in the past, we have had situations where we have imposed or implemented fees for the police that was like a special annual fee that is paid, like I know Discover pays a fee for the police. The hotel or the motel pays a fee for the police. Could we implement a fee for the police because of an increased potential, exposure to the village by virtue of this additional liquor license and the type of activity being conducted at the premises?
I don't think so here. I think the rationale in the other examples was that the developer or the property owner was coming to the village asking for a special use for the entire parcel for the property. And we were looking at the demand on services in relation to all of shops, all of something else. I think that the scale of the demand here for a change in a word or two in the special use ordinance to allow this use is, to me, it doesn't ring the same as we're creating a shopping center and we're doing all of this. I think that was a different result. And I think it would be unusual to look at a particular business. We have massage parlor, we have other businesses, a liquor store, for example. We had a liquor store. I think it would be unusual to try and impose specific fees like that on every individual user. I feel uncomfortable with that as opposed to the scale at which we did it for a development as a whole when they came in to the village.
Okay, and then my final question would be, if the applicant made a representation, let's say, for instance, $40,000 a year in annual revenue, and if that was an important element of the decision that the trustees made, because that revenue was something that we were concerned about and might sway us to actually allow for this particular use, is there a way to true up that fee or true up that benefit so that if it didn't achieve that $40,000, the applicant would have to true up that number to that $40,000?
I would be uncomfortable doing that as well. We have a lot of businesses that pay sales tax. We approve a lot of businesses. In this case, I think that the village share of revenues is set by state law. And I think our taking action to increase our share in the event that they didn't have certain, revenue numbers might be perceived as trying to legislate around the state law. And I just think that on a business by business basis, we've never gone around and said, when we had Panera Foods, Panera, if you don't hit certain sales tax targets, you should pay up because you didn't hit those targets. I think the duty is on the board to, investigate, satisfy themselves, look at this data. If it's on the website of the gaming board, if it's available data, if we can do our own due diligence, if we can look at the information that's out there. But I think, that the applicant can't be responsible for a change in consumer taste, a change in demand. They're taking a risk too. So I just think that the idea of trying to hold someone to a projection and make a true up payment is just, we have a gas station coming in, with an application for the public hearing. And if we started making this demand on every applicant, I don't know where we would stop. So I just think we're in the business of regulating land uses, and we make our best decisions based on the information presented. But I don't think that we can demand a certain, level of revenue on an ongoing basis as a means of maintaining that zoning that we granted. I think that's not part of our consideration that we can take into account. We can take into account when we make the initial decision, but I don't think we can, undo a zoning decision because we're disappointed with the revenue that later developed.
Okay, thanks.
Other discussion? Oh, Mr. Meston.
Just to clarify what Bruce was saying, about almost 2 years ago, Governor Pritzker raised the taxes on the locations, which would be my client, and the state and the municipality still got to keep. The state got a greater percentage of tax revenue, and the municipality stayed at 5%. Governor Pritzker might, from what we hear, he might raise the taxes again by 1 or 2%. However, the municipality will still get that 5% of the total gross money coming in. So there should be an uptick to what the municipality receives, but a downturn from the revenue that the location would receive. And we just did some quick math here. As far as numbers from the Illinois Gaming Board, the location that is exactly a half-mile away, Betty's, which is an unincorporated Lake County, for the last 10 months, they gave to unincorporated Lake County at the 5% tax, $58,000. That's what they did in 10 months. I just wanted you to know that. And currently in Baby Vegas, the last 10 months in Hoffman Estates, last year they, as I said, it was 44,000. The last 10 months, they were at $36,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? If the board wishes to take action this evening, how should they approach it? Should we begin with the ordinance listed under point B and move forward?
I propose that you do the ordinances in that order because it wouldn't make sense to approve video gaming while we still have on the books that video gaming is not allowed in the village. So I put the ordinances in an order
Okay,
that made sense. But, you know, basically you need all 5 ordinances or you haven't really gotten to the end point if you want to
Okay.
approve it.
Trustee Haber.
I mean, it would appear to me, though, that we wouldn't want to change all the ordinances which allowed for video gaming unless we were ready to allow this particular video gaming. So actually, I think it should be in the reverse order if it's possible, or all or none. You know, is there a way to vote on all of them together because they are so interrelated?
Well, maybe what you do is you vote on whether to allow it to see if there's, I mean, I think people who are opposed to this particular application can still vote against it. I think you'll have the sense of the board. If later, I mean, I can't, it seems to me that the first ordinance is going to reveal the sentiment of the board, and unless the trustees think otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's true. The first ordinance is simply to allow video gaming terminals in the village of Riverwoods. Trustee Haber, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll move that we adopt an ordinance allowing video gaming terminals in the village of Riverwoods.
That'd be a motion
Second.
for first reading, maybe?
For first reading, yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, Henry. Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, we're voting first reading. No, seeing none. Roll call.
Trustee Haber. Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Looked like an eye.
Trustee Dickon.
Aye.
Trustee Eastman.
Nay.
Thank you.
Okay, the ordinance, that's the first reading. Now for second reading and adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Seeing none. Roll call.
Trustee Haber.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Dickon.
Aye.
Trustee Eastman.
Nay.
Okay. Need an ordinance number.
That is ordinance number 211121.
I'll move for first reading of an ordinance amending provisions of Article A of Chapter 5 of the Riverwood zoning ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Seeing none. Roll call. This is for first reading.
Trustee
Waive a
Haber.
first- This is a waive first reading.
Waive first reading. Sorry.
Trustee Haber.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Dickon.
Aye.
Trustee Eastman.
Aye.
Okay. Do I see a motion for second reading and adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Trustee Haber.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Dickon.
Aye.
Trustee Eastman. That is ordinance 211122.
I move for a waiver of the first reading of an ordinance amending the provisions of the special use previously granted in ordinance number 2823.
Second,
Discussion. Roll call.
Trustee Haber,
Aye.
trustee Hollander,
aye.
trustee Jamerson,
Aye.
trustee Clayton,
Aye.
trustee Dickon,
Aye.
trustee Eastman.
Aye.
I move for second reading and adoption of that same ordinance.
I wasn't
Second,
done with my note. Okay. Go- All right, now I'm ready. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Haber,
Aye.
trustee Hollander,
aye.
trustee Jamerson,
Aye.
trustee Clayton,
Aye.
trustee Dickon,
Aye.
trustee Eastman.
Nay.
Thank you. That is ordinance 211123.
I'll move for waiver of the first reading of an ordinance adding a Class K liquor license in the Village of Riverwoods.
Oh, right. I've lost track. I'm terribly sorry. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, discussion. Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Haber,
Aye.
trustee Hollander,
aye.
trustee Jamerson,
Aye.
trustee Clayton,
Aye.
trustee Dickon,
Aye.
trustee Eastman.
Aye.
Okay. Motion for second reading and adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Trustee Haber,
Aye.
trustee Hollander,
Aye.
trustee Jamerson,
Aye.
trustee Clayton,
Aye.
trustee Dickon,
Aye.
trustee Eastman.
Nay.
Ordinance 211124.
Okay. An ordinance establishing certain business licenses in the Village of Riverwoods. Motion for first reading and waive first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Did somebody else second that?
Mike Clayton did.
Trustee Clayton, okay. Any discussion? Roll call.
Trustee Haber,
Aye.
trustee Hollander,
Aye.
trustee Jamerson,
Aye.
trustee Clayton,
Aye.
trustee Dickon,
Aye.
trustee Eastman.
Aye.
Okay,
I move for
That
second,
is,
no, not yet,
sorry,
second reading and adoption.
I have a second.
Second,
Discussion. Roll call.
trustee Haber,
Aye.
trustee Hollander,
aye.
trustee Jamerson,
Aye.
trustee Clayton,
Aye.
trustee Dickon,
Aye.
trustee Eastman.
Nay.
Ordinance 211125.
Moving on to old business. An ordinance amending section 8.873 of the Riverwoods Village Code by revising specific code amendments to the 2018 International Residence Code and amending ordinance. What is this?
This is,
Or
I would recommend that we defer this to give a little more time for it to ferment at the village hall before we adopt the building code amendment.
This is the sprinkler stuff, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm reading and I get to International Residential Code and I thought, what is that? Okay,
Yes, ma'am. That's what this is.
okay, thank you so much. We'll put that over until the next meeting or whenever. Let's move on to committee reports. Legal and Police, Trustee Haber.
I don't have anything to report.
Communications, Trustee Dickon.
Sorry, I had a hard time unmuting myself.
You're not alone.
Okay, yeah, so just a very quick update about the website. So the website development team consisting of myself, the chief of police, the village clerk, the mayor and the mayor's assistant, all of us had met last week to discuss a more intuitive navigation structure, and we confirmed a list of the necessary deliverables in order to proceed with the transition to the new website vendor, who is Municode. I had met with Municode's project manager last week. And again, this morning, we discussed the content that we already have gathered, and we confirmed some decisions. I wanted to make sure everyone's looking at the timeline. Trustee Eastman and I had met last week to review and confirm the Woodlands content of the website. We still have a couple of minor questions, which will need to be confirmed by the ecologist and the mayor. But that section is mostly finalized in terms of content and should be ready for migration soon. Trustee Jamerson and I are scheduled to meet later this week to review content for building engineering and stormwater management sections. Trustee Clayton and I are scheduled to meet tomorrow to discuss any related finance or any finance related content and kind of the online payment options, what we could work with right now, and a roadmap for the future. And in terms of the timeline that I had established, it's mostly based on what I feel are realistic dates. So if possible, we would like to go live before mid-January, but as of right now, between now and November 8th, I'll be working to finish analyzing the current content, confirming features, planning for content migration. We should have some mock-up design themes ready for review early next week, and I'll definitely share that. Content migration will start later next week and will run through the end of November. We hope to start testing the website for errors and accessibility in early December, and training for internal staff will most likely start the second week of December. And we hope to go live with launching the site sometime between the last week of December and mid-January. That being said, the existing website will still be up and running without service interruption. And it's my understanding that we are also in the final phases of approval for riverwoods.gov. So keeping our fingers crossed. I think we'll be able to switch to the new email addresses once we receive that approval.
Trustee Hollander.
Lilia, do you know if we have the capability of finding out how many hits we get, both unique and total?
Yes, I actually ran the statistics. I'd be happy to share that with you. You're talking about the existing website?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a full report. I could email that to the board in terms of the most popular sites and visits and the search terms that are used.
I'm looking also for the unique hits, because I think it'll give us an indication of just how much that's being used by the residents.
It's not being used much, sadly.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think primarily because the search functionality isn't there, and the current site is a little bit difficult to navigate. So I think what is happening is people, rather than, at least this is what I'm doing. So whenever I need to pull content from the existing website, I'll just go to Google and then I'll search within Google, and then it will take me to the page within the website. So that offsets the analytics a little bit.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think that's called a workaround, right?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. Are there any other questions or discussion? Okay, building, utilities, and stormwater. Trustee Jamerson.
Building permit report is in the packet. Interesting news is that we're not too far behind 2019 in permit fees, although our construction costs are down considerably because there was a lot of construction at Discover in 2019. 2020 was a disaster. So we believe there's going to be a good revenue from the building department this year, and Lexington Homes will also increase our numbers significantly for next year, assuming that moves forward next year. So the other thing, just so the board knows, I have been talking to the village attorney as well as the mayor about instituting a registration fee or a license fee, depending on how you want to call it, for construction contractors in the village. Many other villages have fees that they charge contractors just to do work in the village. It's part of the building permit process. It could be a significant, well, it wouldn't be significant, but it would be a revenue generator for the village. There would be some bookkeeping that we would have to do to, which would offset that revenue, of course, but I think it is something we should look into. There's other things that fall behind that, such as licensing for electrical contractors in particular, because they're not state licensed, they're licensed by municipalities that give tests. So, and we do not do that. But anyways, so that's coming down the pipe, I hope. We'll see where it goes. I'm doing some analytics for the mayor on that. So that's all I have.
Any questions? Trustee Haber.
I have a question on the permits, on the building permits issued. I just was perusing those earlier today, and I saw that 1935 Calvin Court says it's a new residence, and I kind of looked it up and I saw that it was an auction sale. Looks like it might be a tear down, and it says the value of the new residence is $235,000, and under today's market, it doesn't appear to me that that's a reasonable price to be able to build a new residence, unless it's maybe like 1,000 square feet, which I suspect it's not.
Probably not.
And so I know that when people take out permits, they often try to minimize the value of the work that's being done so as to limit the cost of the permit. I think it's a kind of a common thing that people do, but that just seems egregious. And I'm wondering how we monitor that, if at all, and whether we can monitor it if at all. And then there's another part to the question. So let me ask the second thing as well, and then maybe you could respond to both, or maybe Russ can.
I can.
Wait, let me just
Hold
ask,
on.
and then I'll be done.
Okay.
The other one is that there's one for on October 13, 2021. It's got new residents and it doesn't have an address and it doesn't have a value. And I'm wondering if we're waiting for information for that. And obviously if it's going to come in, and is it going to be picked up in a subsequent month, or are we going to, do we get to adjust the October numbers when that one comes in? I'm just curious, as there's a couple of instances where the amounts are zero and there's less information about the address. And I was wondering how we deal with that in the future.
You want to handle it, Russ? You want, I mean,
Sure.
let me try to answer it and you tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Okay.
The value, we don't base, especially for new residents, we don't base the value, the permit cost on the value. We base it on a square foot. So, and then that's something that Russ does when he reviews the drawings. He's the one that actually puts those permit fees on there. Many times, and I don't know, you'd have to ask Russ if this is what happens, but I know that the county gets these permit numbers, the value, and a lot of times, at least my understanding is people would lowball the number of the construction because then the assessor gets a lower amount, and so their taxes don't go up as much. Russ might be able to comment on that. The other ones, I've talked to Vivian a couple times about ones that were blank like that, and sometimes it's a permit that gets started and then gets pulled before it goes on past that, and that's what she's told me in the past. Russ might be able to shed some more light on that.
Yes, that's exactly what had happened. Somebody comes in, applies for a permit, and we had a couple who get pulled because they don't want to continue with the project this year. And the one with the Calvin Court, that happened. They were going to remodel the house where they were pulling off some back walls to put an addition on. The whole second story fell in, so they tore the whole house down, cleaned it out. They left the foundation, brought in all new drawings. And that house for sure is going to be in the $350,000 to $400,000 range. It's a big two-story. It's about 3,000, a little over 3,000 square feet. But it doesn't make any difference. Once it goes to the assessor, the assessor always sends somebody out and they look at the house and they come up with their own number. They don't care what you put on paper anymore. Just like I don't, that's why we went to square footage, because everybody lowballed and everybody played around. So now you have a formula that goes by square footage and, you have to put the permanent to tie it to, not just this pie in the sky dream.
So my only comment would be that, I guess we're now relying on the county to kind of correct that. I assume they get this permit application and there is probably, and maybe there's not, but I assume there is a stated value on the permit of 235.
They get a copy of the permit as it's there. There is a stated value on that.
Right. So I think that because of the delays in the whole assessment process, I'm just wondering if we should be trying in some fashion to have a more realistic value, because it's going to affect our revenue from a tax standpoint if there's any delay between the assessment, the revised assessment, and this permit. Because if there's a year delay, then we lose a year of that revenue. So to the extent that we can come up with a better system so that the values are at least more reasonable, I think we should try and do that, as opposed to just kind of, saying, oh, well, everyone cheats, so let's let the county fix it. That's just my comment.
Okay. Bruce, I went, I guess, because usually you can take a square footage and you can apply, about $100 a square foot to $150 a square foot, depends on the finishes, and say that that's the assessed evaluation. I don't know if I would be allowed to do that, Bruce. Could I put that on there? I've never done it before.
The value that we have on the report is the stated value that someone put on the permit.
Right.
But what if we call that the permit value and just multiplied the square footage by, I guess we could have a, is there a range?
I would say 125 a square foot to give up. That way you got better than average finishes, but you don't have the most expensive one.
I mean, this is just a report to us.
Right.
If it says permit value based on that formula, that doesn't constrain the county, but at least it would be more uniform, at least on what appears on our records, if that's of any use.
Sure, I could do that. That's not a problem.
I think Trustee Haber's point was that it's the county that's doing the taxation, and it doesn't make any difference if our records show it's zero when the county gets it. If it's $100,000 project, if they say it's $100,000 project and it's a $400,000 project, it's going to take the assessor a year, maybe more, to catch up to it before it gets taxed at the right valuation. I think that's
right,
what Trustee Haber's point was.
Yeah, and
right. But if the permit value is if you take $120, $5 a foot times the square footage, it'll be hard at least to completely undervalue the project if that's what the assessor first looks at on our card.
Well, the reason why it jumped out to me this time was because the first entry here is a new residence on West Course Drive, and it's $900,000 value, and I'm assuming that's probably a low bar.
Yes.
And then the next one is new residence, $235,000. I'm like, wow, that must be low income housing that we have here.
Affordable.
Yeah.
It's affordable housing. That's what we're pushing for.
No, I will do that. There's no problem when I get the permit. I mean, right now I make all the adjustments, put the fees on it, and that's another fee I could just, adjust. And I will use the $125 a square foot to adjust it. And I think we'd be, won't be 100% accurate, but I'll bet you will be a lot more accurate than it is right now.
Yeah, I think even 125, it'll still be low. I think you can't build at 125, not finishes.
Not anymore.
Anywhere in the Village
You
River.
want to use 150? I mean, I'll be glad to. I don't care.
I'd take the square footage of that first house at 900,000 and divide it by the 900,000 and
Figure out what it
whatever
is.
that square footage is probably a reasonable number.
Right.
You know what? I got that one there, and I have another one sitting. I got two more sitting on my desk that just came in, and I know they're both ones in the 600,000, and the other ones I think about 7 or 8. So you know what? When I figure those out, I'll take those 3, see what it comes out to, and we'll come up with a number. Okay. I'll let you know.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any further discussion? Woodlands and Ecology, Trustee Eastman?
Just make it quick. The Trail Tales, we're almost up with 3 weeks of production, so I'll be checking back with Brushwoods and figuring out when they're going to be installing that. The other thing is I've been looking at starting to revise or add to the Village Hall and Flatwoods campus use guidelines. So I'm starting that project. That's about it. Met with Lily again to go over the Woodlands, and then, Mayor, if you need any assistance in getting out the hazard tree survey notices, let me know. I'm sure
Yeah.
that's something we should get out promptly, I think, to the village residents.
Yes, yes, agreed. I've sent a follow-up message to our village forester to see where the data is, if they've finished collecting
I
all the
saw that.
data. And yeah, and we'll get a meeting together and try to carry out the plan that we described earlier, which was grouping and then going out to bid or getting some bids on tree removal that people could opt into or out. Trustee Hollander.
How closely or how clear are we as to whose tree it is when you start doing this stuff?
It's a good question for the village forester. They typically go with the property lines as they see them. And
Okay. All right.
we'll find out.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there are a lot of trees that have been marked that just aren't on that person's property.
Right.
Yeah. So any other questions or comments, discussion? Land use and roads, Trustee Hollander.
I attended the Lake County Annual Transportation Authority meeting. Very little has to do with Deerfield, but just some quick information that might be of interest. They're starting to put in battery-powered locomotives and buses now in Lake County. The motor fuel tax was significantly reduced as expected last year, but the county got more than they actually would have otherwise because the feds decided to give them money from the COVID funding bill. The state apparently allocated a significant amount of money to the county, and therefore all of their projects that they have to pay a 20% share seem to be funded, and therefore there's going to be a lot of construction because they have the 20% copay, as one might put it, available to them. That's it.
Any discussion or questions for Trustee Hollander? Trustee Jamerson.
Has there been any discussion? I mean, has there been any change in the anticipated start date of the Deerfield Road?
Not that I know of. And I had mentioned maybe almost 6 months ago that I had heard that they had sent out letters to those individuals whose property might be asked to be taken. But I've also heard from, and I was told they were sent out letters. But when I spoke to a few of the folks who would be affected, they said they'd never received one. So in case anybody else gets any questions on it, I don't have an answer to that.
Thank you.
Anything else for Trustee Hollander? Finance, Economic Development, Trustee Clayton.
The date is passed now for the responses to our RFP for a new auditor. We got basically 4 responses, 3 of which were qualified and 1 the costs were out of the range. We got qualified responses from Sickage, Hyder Casella, and Selden Fox. All the costs between those 3 were within $1,000 of each other. So we're going to go through a formal evaluation process now, and we hope to have a recommendation of a new auditor for the board to approve at our next meeting. We've also completed the cash disbursements and utility billing processes and procedures, and we're now going to review that with the staff and then finalize that. We've gotten all the one input that we need on the budget, and we're moving that along. And we got the municipal gas tax starting up on January 1st, and we need to find out how exactly to do that. So we're investigating investigating how to implement that municipal 2 cent a gallon gas. That's all I got.
Any questions? Any questions for trustee Clayton? Discussion? Seeing no reason to go into executive session, are there any other comments, general comments from the board? Okay, seeing none. Our next meeting is November 16th. I am hopeful that we will be in person. The executive order expires on the 13th. I would very much like us to get back in person. I know that means at this point wearing masks, but I think it's about time that we try to meet in person. We've got some important discussions coming up, and I think being together might facilitate that. So unless you hear otherwise, I'm going to assume the executive order is going to expire, and we will have an in-person meeting on the 16th. So we'll be in touch with you and certainly the public to let them know what our plans are. There are no comments on that. Motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Trustee Clayton,
Hey.
trustee Dickon,
Hey.
trustee Eastman,
Aye.
trustee Haber,
Aye.
trustee Hollander,
Aye.
trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Can I move, that we get Mr. Clayton a new computer?
No, absolutely not. He can buy it himself.
Microphone.
I'll second that.
Colorado. I didn't realize I left it in Colorado until 2 minutes before the meeting started. So I apologize. I will have it fixed by the next meeting.
Really?
Because we're in person. But our microphones in person won't work. So then we're good.
Yeah, we don't have them yet. So they, technically they don't work. Yeah, I know. Okay, thank you all.